Hello, welcome back to Laser Cut and Fly. I'm the laser model guy. What I want to do in this video is I want to put the servos into the wing that we made on Lightburn in the last video. When we do that and we get everything arranged and get all the pieces all set out ready to cut, then the wing will be complete and we'll be able to move on to the fuselage. So let's get on with that. So the servos I'm going to fit are these 9-gram servos, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to embed it into the wing flat so that just the lever protrudes from the bottom of the wing, so there'll be a little hole around here where that lever can operate in. And what I'll do is I'll show you exactly how I do that. I'm going to be carefully measuring up. I'll be carefully measuring everything up, and then we'll make sure that we get a really precise fit into the underside of the wing, and then I'll show you how we make the horns, and the horns are what are going to be fixed into the ailerons, and by doing that we'll have a really nice kit when we center laser, and everything will fit nicely. Let's have a look at that then. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to create an insert for the servos, and the way I'm going to do that, I've measured the servo up, and I'm going to start with creating the space that the servo will sit into, and I'll do that by making a box that is going to be 22.5 by 22.5, and then building on that I'm going to create another box which is going to be 11mm wide, and then that box is going to overlap onto our main body of our servo there. Okay, so the lugs that hold the servo in, I'll make another box for those, and they are 2.5mm wide by 32.3mm high, and then that box sits right here, and the distance there is 18.1mm from this back edge to the front edge of those lugs there. So I'm going to just measure that. It needs to be 18.1mm. So if I come along there and measure to there, that is 17.75. So I want to go 0.4 of a millimeter will do it. That'll give us a little bit of clearance. So all I'm going to do is click on our lugs, or the shape that's going to form the lugs. I'm going to press Control and Shift and move away and move along 0.4, 1, 2, 3, 4, because each of those, if you press Control and Shift and then your arrow buttons, you'll move 0.1 of a millimeter. So I'll just remeasure just to make sure that we're more or less where we want to be. So that's 18.15, so I'm quite happy with that. Now, one of the tips that somebody gave the other day was that I now want to center this. So if I select this shape and then press Control and select that shape, so I've got both of these shapes, and then I go to this button up here, press that, just like that. So next thing I want to do is take this and just bring that down so that it reaches our lug. Now the reason for this slot here is the lever on the servo is going to operate in this area, so that needs to be cut out as well, and it needs to come all the way down to our lug there, just to make a sensible shape. So all I'm going to do now is select all of those and then come down to our weld function here, click on that, and we've now got the appropriate cutout shape for the servo to sit in, and then the operating area for the arm. And now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop this into there, because what I want to do is I want to form two pieces, one to go above and one to go below, and the reason for those will be they'll be inserts of 1/8 balsa, and the servo will be able to sit inside those and then operate underneath the wing. So to create these shapes, all I'm going to do is use the line tool. I'm going to zoom right in, and I'll make this a different colour so that we can see it, and all I'm going to do is go from this corner to this corner to there, across, just following this shape, and then scroll all the way down and snap that onto that, and that's the shape for our bottom piece of balsa. Now I'm going to do exactly the same at the top. Perfect. So I'll be able to put those two pieces of balsa in now, and we'll be left with an aperture for our servo. So I'll just bring those out. And we can now, that was only there as a pattern, so we don't actually need that now. But what I'm going to call these is WS1, which is wing servo 1, and WS2, wing servo 2. Let's make those our engraving layer. Move that to a bit where it's more central. And then I'm going to add a couple of little tabs just to make sure that they stay in place when we are ready to cut them out, or when we use the laser to cut them out. I don't want them to fall out of the sheet. Okay, so if I just control copy and control V, is I can add those straight in. I'll put them into a sensible place up here. Okay, so that's those. Next thing we need to do is work out where we're going to put the horn. So if that is our servo sitting there, then the operating handle or the operating lever is going to be just there. If I just create a line, just put a line on there for now, it's going to come through so our horn needs to be cut in just on this line here. Now what we'll do is we'll make the horns from 16th ply, and I want them to be the same size, or more or less the same height as the lever on the servo. So the lever on the servo from the center where it rotates is 15 millimeters. So we're going to make the horns, and the way I'm going to do that is there'll be a little piece which fits into a slot in the aileron, and then the horn will protrude from there. So to do this, I'm going to make a small shape, and I'm going to make that shape 3.2 millimeters wide, 3.2 millimeters wide, and I'm going to make it 8mm long or 8mm high. So then, because our lever on the horn on the servo is 15mm, I'm going to now make another box, and this is going to be 15mm wide by 10mm high. So if I bring this shape until it snaps onto the other shape. Now by highlighting them both, I can center them both using the centering tool, and then from there what I can do is select this and we'll use our snipping tool to take away those pieces. Now if we go to nodes, all I want to do is add a node into the top by hovering, or to this end by hovering across, hovering over the line, pressing I. That inserts a node, and then I want to bring this node right in like that. Okay, and then by converting this center node to a smooth curve node, hover over it, press S, and then all I want to do is just using the corner nodes and the smooth curve nodes in the center, I just want to smooth that out a little, just like that. And then when we come and look at our shape, we've now made a horn. So all I want to do now is make a small circle, and that just wants to be around 1.5mm, 1.5, and then we can take that shape, put it where it looks about right on our horn, which is just forward of, just higher than center, and then if we group those, that's our horn made. Now what we'll do is we'll cut these out of 1.5mm plywood. So on our aileron we're going to need to cut a 1.5mm slot into that aileron. So if I create a little shape like that, so I know that that's going to be the right size for our horn on the aileron, and leave the height exactly as it is. Now we've already put our ailerons up here, so what I'm going to do is bring one down, superimpose on there, just like that, and then I'm going to control and grab the slot for the horn, and then I'm going to right click and group. So when I bring our aileron away, it's now got the slot for the horn. So rather than do that exercise twice, what I'm going to do is I'll delete that one, and then I will copy and paste and I'll just put them back. Bearing in mind we don't want to be on that 200mm line, so I've got to keep away from that. And then this one, Make sure we're not hitting anything. No, all good. So that's it. So that's the slots for our horns. I've produced the horn, and we'll put that up here with the spar, and I'll just label underneath it what that has to be. So that is going to be 1.6 millimeter ply. That's just to remind us really, so I'll group those for now. And we're going to need, we'll need 2 of them for the wing, but we're also going to need 1 for the rudder and 1 for the elevator when we get to doing those. I'll leave that in fact, I think, because that can be part of the plan. So with that in mind, I need to label up WA2, WA2 and WA1. So the last thing that we need to do is allow for the cable that operates the servo to come through these ribs and then drop down in between the 2 W1s there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in on the bottom of the rib, and then I'm going to shield it with a piece of 1/16 balsa. What it will do is it will just shield the cable, and then I'll put a hole in that piece of balsa just there. So with that in mind, I'm just going to create a shape here, and all I want is for that shape to be exactly that length, but I want it to be 20 millimeters high. Just take one of these W1s from here, and I'll just turn that up, and our cable will just be there, and this piece of balsa will just sit in there. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do, create a shape once again, and I'm going to make it that size, and it's going to be 1.6 millimeters wide. So that's how wide that will be. Now what I'll need to do is I'll just need to turn that slightly, and then we'll bring that line to just snap onto that one, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a small slot in the bottom of the rib to accommodate this balsa so it's nice and smooth. Okay, and then on top of that, in order to accommodate the cable, I'm going to produce another shape, and that shape is going to be 3 millimeters high by 2 millimeters wide, and that will fully accommodate the cable for the servo. And then if I just put that on top of this, there we go, and that will be our shape. So if I just overlap those, what I can do is I can weld those together, and then so if we just go to our snipping tool, and then we can just snip that away, and then again we can just snip that piece away. We have now got the shape that we would need to accommodate this piece of balsa with the cable sitting nicely underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alter this, and I'm going to call it W1A. So I'll make a copy of that, because what I'm going to have to do now, and maybe we should have done this earlier before we did all this, I'm going to have to replace one of those W1s with the new W1A. There we go. Okay, so we need a couple of W3s to be exactly the same, so I'll just bring those over. Just bring one of those over and I'll just lift that up and superimpose onto our and all I'm going to do is, using nodes, I'm going to copy that, and when we finish we've got this. This is going to be W3A. W3A. There we go. So if I just group, and then Control C, Control V, I've now got two of those, so I can remove one of the W3s. And replace that with a W3A. I've got my other W3A to go in there as well. And now all I need to do is alter a W2. So just name that up, W28. And what we'll find now is we've now got another W2 in there, so we just remove that, and then make a copy of this. And then we can put those back into our pattern or back into our cutting plan. Just like that. Just put an A in there so we don't get confused at any time. There we go. Let's group that. And I think we're now more or less complete. All we need to do now is make sure that we've got a place for our cable to come out of in our sheet of 1/16 balsa. So what I'm going to do is make a small shape. I'm going to put that there. Just change that to a cutting. And so the cable will run between the wing rib and this sheet of 1/16 balsa, which will be fastened underneath, and it will run through there, protected by the balsa and protected by the rib above, and then it will drop down into the fuselage there. So that's the plan for that. So the next thing I need to do is to just group this. Group, and then make a copy of this down here, because we'll need to cut these out, and this will be called I'll call it WAC to be fair, wing aileron cable protector. Okay, and that just needs to be on our engraving layer. So we group, and then copy, and then V. So I'll put those onto a sheet where we're cutting 1/16 balsa, and we've now got a situation, or we've now reached the point where our servo will fit in neatly there, and then the cable will run through the ribs and drop down into the fuselage there, and it'll be fully protected by a 1/16 sheet at the bottom. Now we may have been able to do this in a different order. We might have cut these in while we were doing the ribs in the first place, but we've done them in this sequence just to keep everything straightforward. So you know, dealing with one thing at a time. So that's all there is for today. Next I'll be looking at making and designing and making the fuselage with a few simple rules that we can easily follow. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hope you've enjoyed this one, and I'll see you all again very soon.